This show is supported by Mixtape. Mixtape is a narrative adventure game by BAFTA award-winning studio Beethoven and Dinosaur. It draws inspiration from classic coming-of-age movies, bringing together 90s nostalgia, the highs and lows of adolescence, and the bittersweet feelings of growth, transformation, and moving on. Featuring music from icons of the era like Joy Division, The Smashing Pumpkins, Susie and the Banshees, and The Cure, you'll play through a mixtape of memories set to the soundtrack of a generation. Mixtape is available May 7th on console and PC. Check it out at mixtape.game.
This show is supported by Odoo. When you buy business software from lots of vendors, the costs add up, and it gets complicated and confusing. Odoo solves this. It's a single company that sells a suite of enterprise apps that handles everything from accounting to inventory to sales. Odoo is all connected on a single platform in a simple and affordable way. You can save money without missing out on the features you need. Check out Odoo at odoo.com. That's odoo.com.
Modes of Thought in Anterran Literature. Second-year classics, Harvard University.
Yes, okay, I will. Okay, this is the class feed for Modes of Thought in Anterran Literature. I know the feed has been quiet for a while. That was not an accident. As some of you know, there was kind of a lot of misunderstandings around things that were happening in the class, and some of the students had some difficulties, which happens. And then, of course, we've had some global disruptions that you're all aware of. The change of the power structure in China is notable. The internet blackout in the Eastern Hemisphere that is shrunk but is ongoing. And of course, supply line disruptions and the markets fluctuating wildly. Anyway, it's been a really crazy time. So it's just with some sensitivity to that we're going to go ahead and start this feed back up, knowing that although things are incredibly uncertain, for some reason there is still growing interest in Anterra and the study of the Anterran culture and their way of life. And right as I was asked to pick this back up, a document landed on my desk. It is an epic poem that was inscribed on the temple of the Reed Coast, and it is so much greater than what I was originally led to believe. I was told they had found something. I did not know it was this extensive. I hadn't got my hands on it until just recently, and you could spend your entire career on just one of the 9 columns of text. So I'm going to give you what I have. I believe in sharing knowledge freely. What I have here is a document from the Department of Antiquities at the University of Beijing. Nobody told me who sent it. I'm sure I'm not supposed to have it. But nonetheless, there's a memorandum at the beginning of the document that spells out some of the things that you might want to look for. and then the entire text as it is currently been translated. It is amazing. Primarily, it's the journey of a hero named Mem Ta'Hara. Mem Ta'Hara was a member of the noble class. Her father was a famous doctor, Rah Siala, and I don't need to give much away. I want you to hear it. I do think it's worth reading this memorandum first, so let me just get that out, and we'll do that first. Okay. Prefatory memorandum on the Reed Coast columns, Inner Sanctum Wall, Site A3, restricted circulation, Department of Antiquities, University of Beijing. Compiled under the direction of Professor with contributions from Dr. Professor and Dr. The following document presents the most complete transcription to date of the 9 interior columns recovered from the inner sanctum wall of the Reed Coast Temple Complex, Site A3. Attributed to the late Second Empire period of the Anterran civilization. So, yeah, approximately 68,000 to 72,000 BCE. And it says here pending stratigraphic reconciliation. So they're still trying to date it more closely. What is herein referred to as the Binder of Sorrows, that's the name of this poem, the Binder of Sorrows, should not, at this stage, be treated as a singular authored work, nor even as a unified narrative composition. Rather, the evidence suggests a layered inscriptional process, likely executed across multiple generations of carvers, ritual specialists, and possibly state-sanctioned redactors. So, it was carved more, it may have been recarved. Continuing, several features support this claim. 1. Stylistic divergence across columns. Columns 1 through 3 exhibit a relatively consistent mythopoetic cadence with strong invocational structures and oral performative residue, repetition, breathmark spacing, and cantatory phrasing. Beginning in column 4 and becoming pronounced by column 7, there's a marked tonal deviation, right? Syntactic fragmentation, spatial paradox, and what can only be described as conceptual inscription, i.e., glyphs that encode contradiction rather than narrative progression. This is really interesting. There's not been enough work done on this yet. The way these glyphs are carved has a meaning inside the meaning. There's so much to unpack there. This suggests not corruption, but intentional multiplicity of voice. Okay, 2, glyph depth and hierarchical emphasis. Preliminary LiDAR scans confirm that certain glyph clusters, particularly those associated with Vocara, Naelu, and the phrase translated as fifth name, are carved significantly deeper than surrounding text. That's what we were just talking about. The way these things are carved has meaning. 3, nonlinear temporality. The narrative sequence, while superficially chronological, demonstrates repeated violations of linear causality. References to future lineage, as in column 8, retroactive identity loss in column 7, and prefigurative political structures in column 9 suggest that the text operates within a recursive temporal framework. Readers are cautioned against imposing a strictly forward-moving interpretive model. Hindsight is 2020, right? So the fact that there are multiple authors and that this was carved over generations means that some things were written with the future already known to the author. A critical interpretive error, already observed in early internal discussions, is the tendency to collapse Vocara and Naelu into a shared maritime pantheon, or treat them as parallel deities governing adjacent domains. The text does not support this. This is really interesting. So this is the question of why are there two gods of the sea? Vocara is consistently represented as a binding agent, a regulator of exchange, a figure who enforces proportionality between action and consequence. Okay? We can go deeper on this later, but Naelu, by contrast, is never encountered directly as an individual speaker. The phenomena attributed to Naelu, for instance in column 5, are aggregative, diffuse, and resistant to personification. The so-called bone whisperers are not emissaries, but emergent formations, what Dr. has termed grief composites. Grief composites. Dr. is saying that Naelu is the existence of pain, emotional pain, and that it ebbs and flows without desire or intent. So Vocara is something you bargain with. Naelu is something that exists and you stand upon, or it falls upon you, right? It is a medium of persistence, that which allows uncontained suffering to coalesce into form. And it says here, the distinction is not trivial. It marks, we believe, an early Anterran recognition of two incompatible truths, that suffering may be structured and that it may exceed structure. So interesting. Continues here, on the fifth name. The phrase rendered here as the fifth name in column 3 remains among the most contested elements of the texts. Its rarity, appearing in only 3 other fragmentary inscriptions across all known sites, and its association with Vocara suggests a technical term within Anterran metaphysics rather than a poetic embellishment. Yeah, this is really getting into the nitty-gritty of Anterrans as they thought of themselves, right? The names referenced in Anterran texts do not correspond to personal identifiers, but to ontological strata, modes through which a being is recognized, remembered, and situated within the world. So their name is their essence in relationship to society. And that way, the names are a doorway. They are something that you exist in and pass through to the next name. The fifth name in this schema appears to govern burden attribution. That is, the assignment or containment of experiential consequence, pain, grief, memory load. So, the stage of life at which an Anterran citizen reaches their fifth name, they can move pain. I guess that's what it's saying. If this interpretation holds, then the actions of Mem Ta'Hara, particularly her refusal to designate a sacrificial subject and her later participation in self-unnaming rituals in column 9, may represent an unprecedented intervention into the system, not a rejection of divine order, but a reconfiguration of its operational logic. That's why this poem is so important. It is not just outlining Anterran culture as it was. It is representing the shift from Second Empire to Third Empire. And that's why it's so important to be understood. And we don't understand it yet. Continuing with this sort of opening memorandum here, this next section is something that we've discussed. It seems like maybe they haven't discussed as much, on empathy as a mechanism. Readers familiar with the Matoka ritual will recognize thematic continuities in the treatment of transferred pain and ritualized suffering, However, the Binder of Sorrows extends this framework into a domain we have not previously encountered. Empathy, in this context, is not merely an ethical or emotional condition. It is transferable, amplifiable, detachable from origin, and most notably, deployable. Several passages, see columns 5, 6, and 8, imply the existence or emergence of a capacity by which an individual may induce the experience of their own suffering in another without undergoing that suffering themselves. The implications of such a mechanism, if not purely metaphysical, are profound. Yeah, not just profound, I mean, it's terrifying. And I think that that's the rabbit hole that Gary Patakoff was exploring when he disappeared. Final advisory. This document should not be approached as a heroic epic in the conventional sense. While Mem Ta'Hara occupies the narrative center, the text resists stable moral framing. Acts that appear sacrificial may produce asymmetrical consequence. That's interesting, and we'll have to dig into that later, but asymmetrical consequences are fascinating. Apparent victories often coincide with structural shifts whose long-term effects are neither celebrated nor condemned within the text itself. Again, we're reading something out of context by so many thousands of years. We're not going to understand all the nuances of what is a victory and what is a defeat in the Anterran mindset. But hopefully we can begin to. We recommend that readers attend closely to moments where the language fails or collapses into contradiction, instances of unnamed or unnameable entities, and especially to the repeated tension between bearing and displacing suffering. It is the position of this department that the Binder of Sorrows does not merely describe a mythic past, but encodes a transformation in how the Anterran culture conceptualized responsibility, identity, and shared experience. Whether that transformation should be understood as advancement remains at present an open question. End of memorandum. And it says, further annotations forthcoming upon completion of column 9, comparative analysis. So I hope I got my hands on those. We'll have to see. Okay. That's their preface. My preface is a little bit simpler. This is the story of Mem Ta'Hara, as I said. But also, this is a poem from out of our past that has suddenly appeared. I think the translation is really quite beautiful at times, and you should just let it happen. Let it speak to you. So I'm going to take a quick break, and then I'm going to come back and I'm going to read column 1, part 1. Okay, column 1, the invocation and the famine. This is part 1, broken invocation and the naming of Siala. This is as inscribed on the first column of the inner sanctum wall, Reed Coast Temple, Site A3. The upper third of this column is cracked, so we kind of drop in right in the middle of this thing. And just to be clear, by column, we mean column of text, right? This is carved in the wall. It's not carved on a physical column. Okay. Here we go. Part 1, broken invocation and the naming of Siala. Praise be to Vokara, tide taker, binder of sorrows, child of great Ecopa, who drinks the tears of widows, who binds grief in nets of black twine, who carries the keels of the faithful over the waters that forgot the stars. Praise him whose fingers comb the mouths of 9 rivers. Praise him who recovers the salt from old wounds and counts it. Praise him who remembers the drowned by their weight on land, if not by name. Praise him who sits beneath the 9th current, where morning is knotted and lowered on hooks of bone. Praise him when the sea is kind. Praise him also when it is not. And praise to Naelu, the deep current, the keeper below the keeper, who watches over the drowned and braids their hair in silence. Praise Naelu of the cold chambers, who closes the mouths of those taken too quickly, who untangles the fingers of sailors still clutching rope, who teaches the sunken dead to lie still in the pressure dark. Praise the one who does not return what has been accepted. Praise the one whose halls are soft with silt and wedding rings. Praise the current under the current. Praise the silence below the prayer. Praise the winds that do not name themselves, for even they carry stories. Praise the reef that cuts and warns. Praise the tide poles blackened by storms. Praise the gull that circles over blood water. Praise the old woman of the shore who taste the spray and know which god is nearest. Praise the boys who dive through kelp for shell and coral. Praise the girls who set reed lamps adrift for the lost. Praise the salt bearers. Praise the net menders. Praise those who bury empty baskets with the same care as the dead. There's a couple of notes here. 1C, the phrase remembers the drowned by their weight on land appears in fragmentary inscriptions recovered from the southern trench pylons. That's interesting. Dr. suggests that this may indicate a non-narrative accounting of the dead, implying that certain Anterran deities track existence not by identity, but by measurable burden, as though we are really identified by the amount of our grief, as though it were a commodity. And annotation 1D, 9th current. It is not geographically attested in any known oceanographic model. So Professor proposes it refers to a metaphysical layer of the sea, possibly aligned with post-mortem transition states rather than a physical depth. Competing inscriptions reference a 7th current, suggest that there was some regional variation or a non-fixed cosmological schema. We know that the number 9 is kind of predominated, but apparently early on the number 7 was also of interest. Okay, continuing. Quote, but above all, carve the name of Mem Ta'Hara, of the Reed Coast, born to Rah Siala, healer of the North Coast tides, whose hands can unmake fever, and whose voice sings blood back into the mouths of dying sons. Carve also Rah Siala, child of breakers and red moon water, who knew the speech of swelling joints and infected cuts, who could smell rot under bandage cloth before the flies knew it, who opened abscesses with obsidian and closed them with river paste and song, who set the bones of fishermen under lamp smoke while their wives held them down and cursed the gods. Rah Siala, who could stop a child's shaking by pressing 2 fingers beneath the ear. Rah Siala, who knew which tide brought jelly stings and which brought corpse bloom. Rah Siala, who marked the dying not with surrender but with oil, so that even in their last breath their skin would shine like those expected at a feast. Rah Siala, whose sleeping mat was seldom cool. Rah Siala, whose doorway was never empty, of the living or the dead. Rah Siala, who lived in the house where agony was made to wait. There's a note here, 1E. The term translated here as house where agony was made to wait appears to be a compound glyph combining delay, pain, and boundary. Dr. notes that the structure of the phrase suggests not the removal of suffering, but its temporary suspension, consistent with Anterran medical philosophy, which prioritized containment over cure. Okay, that's interesting. Continuing. There they came in famine years and flood years, and seasons of fish rot, and seasons of spear fever. The bitten, the broken, the burning, the nearly gone. Men with hook wounds through the wrist, women torn open in birth, children swollen with inland parasites, divers coughing pink foam. Old soldiers from upland border quarrels whose scars reopened when the moon thinned. Even priests came here, though they covered their bracelets when they entered. Even thieves came here, bringing payment in silence. Even those under exile shadow came by night, with cloaks over their heads, and cousins posted at the lane. And Siala received them. Not kindly always, not gently always, but fully. If a fever could be cut, he cut it. If a wound could be packed, he packed it. If a shattered hand could only be bound and mourned before it blackened, he said so. He was not a priest. He did not lie for comfort. He was not a singer who gilded pain. He named what could be saved and what could not. For this, the coast trusted him more than the officiants of 3 shrines. Annotation 1F. The contrast between healer and priest is unusually explicit. Professor suggests this may reflect early tension between empirical and ritual authority within the Anterran coastal elites. Okay, that's a lot to read into that, but there is a lot there. The relationship between medicine and priesthood in early societies is extensive. You could study that for years. I don't want to get sucked into that now. Let's keep going with this. Quote, he fasted not to call the gods, but to spare his brother the agony of a shattered spine. He gave up goat fat during flood season, so an old diver's daughter could take broth. He slept sitting upright through 2 whole nights with a child's feet in his lap, rubbing warmth into them until dawn. He burned his own forearm with a hooked coal to prove to a panicked mother that the boil on her son's thigh must be lanced deeper than she could bear to watch. When she struck him for it, he thanked her for the strength of her arm and cut the boy anyway, and the pus came like yellow rain. and the child lived. So carve Siala, not because gods listened to him more quickly, but because men did. And carve Ta'Hara before her going out and binding, as she was then, not yet the voyager, not yet the sorrow-bearer of distant waters, but a daughter who learned measure under the healer's roof. Who learned measure. There's no note there, but I'm curious about that translation. Continuing. She learned there how much blood a body may lose before the mouth forgets speech. She learned which cries mean pain and which mean shame. She learned that some men apologize while dying and some begin telling the truth. She learned to boil needles. She learned to scrape old skin from burns. She learned to hold down the shoulders of a man delirious with reef poison while Siala cut away the dead flesh. She learned not to faint when the belly opens. She learned not to praise the gods too early. Annotation 1G. The phrase not to praise the gods too early. This phrase appears in 3 unrelated inscriptions across coastal sites. Dr. interprets this as a caution against premature attribution of recovery to divine intervention, a rare instance of skepticism embedded in liturgical text. That's true. I mean, we don't know if this is liturgical exactly, but it is. It's a little edgy. It's a little snarky. She learned not to praise the gods too early, but we are seeing that she's young. Mem Ta'Hara, learning from her father, was exposed to some pretty brutal stuff and learned some important healing skills. Okay, to continue. It is said that as a child she carried the wash basins to the sea. There she poured out blood water in the shallows and watched it ribbon red through the foam. The fish would come, then turn away. Once, a woman followed her to the rocks and asked which bowl held her husband. The woman had not wept in the house where agony was made to wait. She had sat upright through the night, hands folded in her lap, as though keeping watch over a body that was no longer there. Her husband had gone out before dawn 3 days prior, with 6 others, to clear the reef channel of broken stone so the tide boats could pass without splitting their hulls. The work was slow and thankless. They tied themselves to one another with rope so that if one slipped, the others might hold. When the swell turned, the rope tightened. When the swell turned again, it did not loosen. They pulled 3 men back. 1 still breathed. 2 did not. Her husband was not among them. They said the current had taken him under the cut rock, where the water runs narrow and fast, where even the strongest swimmer cannot turn his body. They said it was quick. They said he would not have known. They said many things. She did not ask them to repeat any of it. Now she stood at the rocks, her hands empty. Which bowl holds him? She asked. Mem Ta'Hara looked at the basins, at the thin red water, already fading into salt, at the pieces that could not be named without breaking something open. She answered, "None, only what pain left behind." The woman struck her so hard, her ear rang through the evening tide. The basins tipped The water ran out between the stones. Siala, hearing of it, did not scold the woman. He did not comfort the child. He said only, "Remember that answer. It is true. Never say it to the grieving." Okay, there's an annotation here, annotation 1H. This exchange is an early articulation of dual truth ethics. The idea that factual accuracy and emotional truth may require separate expressions depending on context. That's a fancy way of saying that she has no bedside manner, and her father is explaining to her that being callous with this widow is unkind. Even though she's being honest with her. She's saying, I don't have anything from your husband because he was stuck under the ocean. So I think the problem the widow has is that she's not going to be able to bury or celebrate any physical part of her husband. Nothing remains. Yeah, it's fascinating. Okay, that's the end of part one, the invocation and the naming of Siala. The next part is the part two, the debt that was offered. I'm going to do that in a separate reading. So there's a lot to think about just in this first part of this first column. We have 9 columns to go. I hope you're as excited about this as I am. And as always, email me your questions, and I'll try to put the text of this up somewhere where you can find it. Okay. I'll see you guys in class.
Modes of thought in Anterran literature. The binder of sorrows. Coming soon.
This show is supported by Odoo. When you buy business software from lots of vendors, the costs add up and it gets complicated and confusing. Odoo solves this. It's a single company that sells a suite of enterprise apps that handles everything from accounting to inventory to sales. Odoo is all connected on a single platform in a simple and affordable way. You can save money without missing out on the features you need. Check out Odoo at odoo.com. That's odoo.com.